What is up, kitchen table wizards? What's up, deck brewers from all over the world? If you like sea monsters, if you like Krakens, if you like Leviathans, if you like the occasional shrimp taco, you are at the right place, because we are going to give you inspiration for your sea monster deck. Sea monsters, let's go! Now, some of you might remember, but the second video I ever did on this channel was a sea monster deck. It was a dark sea monster deck, a control sea monster deck with blue, but also with black. Now the sea apparently cleared up a little bit, the black's gone. There is some seaweed growing in the sea. So today we're going to call this deck our miso soup sea monster deck, or a Simic ramp sea monster deck.
Ah, Simic, a perfect deck for the river hoopoe.
Yeah, right. I hear there's some camembert cheese with the neighbors, maybe you can check that out?
Then I must leave now to return later.
Yes. I look forward to that. Okay, good, he's gone. Now we can focus on what is important. We can give back to you inspiration for some nice cards to put in the deck. And where can you buy those cards? Of course, with our sponsor, Card Market. A lot of singles can be found there. All the singles you want can be found there. And these nice people of Card Market, they keep throwing vouchers at me, and I keep throwing them to you. And the only thing you need to do to be eligible to win a voucher, just very simple: subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and let me know. Kaldheim spoilers are on the go. Which card you want me to brew a deck around, and maybe you are eligible to win a voucher, and I will announce this at the end of the video. Whew. The deck is about $50 US, a little bit less in euros, and of course we start with the style of the deck, the lands. We play 25 lands in this deck. Now, you know that style is very important for my flavorful decks. I like to mix and match my basic lands so that they are nice and flavorful in this deck, because we all want to be a little bit stylish. Although if the barbers stay closed for another couple of months, I probably look like this guy and style will be all out the window. I play 12 islands and 4 mountains, as this is mainly a blue deck. Ah, I see you thinking, Taros lands, why the heck is he putting in Taros lands? Well, I did a little bit of research and I found a lot of islands with some nice art for the sea monster deck. Unfortunately, I didn't find any good forest that really fitted the bill. If you know a forest that could fit in the sea monster deck, leave it in the comments below. But for this deck, I also thought, hey, sea monsters, I always associate these cards with Taros. So why don't we include the nice Taros lands? So this full art by Sam Burley should do the trick. In the sea on our Slumbering Isle, we can find some Thornwood Falls, 2 Temples of Mystery and a Flooded Grove to help with our mana fixing. There's also a lonely sandbar off the coast of this island, where you can find this Temple of the False God. And in one of the caves of the island, you'll find this Bonder's Enclave. So this was our mana base. Now let's look at some ramp. When you're on sea, you probably need a compass, and having a dynamo for some extra energy will also be handy. Now our seaweed needs to be cultivated, and for this I have hired Yargol to explore the island and to find me some growth spirals to get the seaweed growing, of course. Now another way to ramp is by collecting the bounty of Luxa. Sometimes you get a card, sometimes 3 mana, but both are always useful in this deck. Now around our nice island, of course, we have a sea full of sea monsters. But wait, first let's talk a little bit about this little island. It's called Arixmethes Slumbering Isle. It sleeps until you cast 5 spells and will give you 2 mana per turn. And when it wakes up, you better wanna be elsewhere. We also play 2 little Krakens that can grow bigger and gain a lot of tentacles. In our sea there's also an annoying octopus with some jellyfish. It's a great defensive card. And surprisingly there's also a big shark to counter creatures or artifacts. Now, between our little island and the mainland is a strait called the Gyre Strait. Here we find this powerful serpent called Aesi, and he likes ramp and card draw. Something we all love, right? The Serpent of Yawning Depths is here to make sure our fishes are not blocked. And the Tolarian Kraken works very well with Aesi. Koma is our big sea serpent. It brings along quite a bit of serpents when it sticks around. And those can tap permanents, make Koma indestructible, and they also make a mean miso soup. Okay, back to the Krakens now. Scourge of the Fleet is not the fastest Kraken. It's not the strongest Kraken. But it definitely is the most useful Kraken when you're behind in a game. Especially when you have a lot of islands out, playing this sea monster can be game changing. We also play one big drum. It's an 8/8, it's legendary, it has hexproof, it's approved for the deck. Now the following card is definitely not a Kraken, not a Leviathan, not an Octopus, but it is a sea monster nonetheless. Waker of Waves is a big whale that you can use as a cantrip in the early game. A really fun card. More fun in the air? No, I'm not talking about this French-speaking simic bird whose name I will not pronounce. I'm talking about a flying, trampling 6/6 that has Shroud, the Sky Swallower. More fish? Okie doke, Captain. Here is the Storm-Tide Leviathan, which is a fun one with Scourge of the Fleets, and less fun for your opponent if he or she doesn't have flyers. Can we even go bigger? Sure we can. Here is the Inkwell Leviathan. He likes romantic walks at the beach, candlelight lobster dinners, and smashing face. Now sometimes there's a storm on the seas, but that's not a bad thing. Trix the Sudden Storm is a flying giant that likes our sea monsters, as it makes them cheaper to cast and they can't be countered. So these were the creatures, now on to the other spells in the deck, and there's a little bit of everything. Sometimes you need to slow down the aggro deck a bit with the Bean Veil, and sometimes you just want that extra land to play a big sea monster. This card does both, so let's give it a try in our deck. Now blue is the color of bounce. Now I didn't include any otters in this deck, but I have some bounce for you in this deck. Into the Royal and Whelming Wave bounce most of the creatures. Simic Charm also does some bouncing, and it's also great on the offense and the defense. And we play a sea monster deck, so we need to include 2 copies of Omen of the Sea. Now sometimes your opponent plays a big flying creature that flies over your sea monsters. Now when this happens, no problem, we just turn it into a fish. Now our seas are quite ominous. This means you can take an excursion, and if you're lucky and wait long enough, you can spot some Krakens. Now you might be thinking, did he also put Tassa, God of the Sea, in the deck? Well, I have a story about Tassa, but it didn't really end well, but that's in the deck. Kiora, Best the Sea God, makes a big Kraken, completely flushes out your opponent's board and takes its best permanent. And then you bounce it with Into the Royal and play it again. Now, Tassa is not making an appearance in this deck, just a small intervention. Countering spells or card drawing, blue loves them both. Now the following card maybe doesn't really fit flavor wise, but it's such a great card. I really wanted to test it out in a deck, and this for me is the perfect deck to put it in. Sublime Epiphany is the card you want to draw in a late game when the board is full of creatures. This card does everything. Now seriously, it really does everything. Now I already told you a little story where Gyre bests the sea god, so let's look at a planeswalker now. Gyre Behemoth Beckoner helps us ramp and draws us cards. Top-notch card in this Seamonster deck and also very flavorful. So we are now at the end of our little sea adventure, but stick around because we need to look at some power rankings now for our matches. No surprise that this deck can do powerful stuff. It sometimes is a bit slow, so having a good opening hand is important. You can play offensively and defensively with the deck. And if you're like me and you like your sushi deck, you'll enjoy playing with these sea monsters. Ram decks are usually very effective against mid-range decks, and this one is no different. The other matchups are a little bit less favorable. Now on to the card market winner of the week. Congrats, Marijke Puch. Check out the info in the description below how you can contact us and claim your prize. Now before I leave you, I want to show you 5 cards I really liked for this deck, but they just didn't make the cut. These 3 sea monsters can replace any big sea monster in our deck. And I couldn't do a sea monster deck without mentioning Tassa, God of the Sea, and Kefnet's Monument. Okay, now let's quickly wrap this up before the River Hoopoe returns. As always, keep it casual.